The door flew open with such force that the hinges screamed in protest. There she stood, his boss, her face flushed with an emotion he couldn't quite place. "You're fired, Daniel Matthews," she announced to the entire office. Before he could process what was happening, she crossed the room in determined strides, grabbed his face between her hands, and kissed him with such intensity that the world around them disappeared. The office erupted in gasps and whispers. No one saw this coming, except perhaps everyone who had been watching them dance around their feelings for months. If you've ever wondered what happens when professional boundaries collapse under the weight of undeniable attraction, stick around and hit that subscribe button. This story of a single dad who risked everything by ignoring his boss's advances will take you on an emotional journey you won't want to miss. *. Daniel Matthews stared at the mountain of bills spread across his kitchen table, the harsh yellow light from the overhead fixture making the red "Final Notice" stamp seem even more threatening. He rubbed his tired eyes and glanced at the clock. 11:43 p.m. Another late night of trying to make numbers work that simply wouldn't cooperate. From down the hall came the soft, rhythmic breathing of his 6-year-old daughter, Emma. The sound centered him, as it always did. Everything he did, every sacrifice, every 18-hour workday, every skipped meal to ensure she had enough, was for her. Since Melissa had walked out on them 3 years ago, it had been just the two of them against the world. Daniel gathered the bills into a neat stack and slid them into a folder labeled "Urgent." Tomorrow was payday. It wouldn't cover everything, but it would keep the lights on for another month. He padded quietly down the hall, stopping at Emma's door to peek in. Her small form was curled around the stuffed elephant he'd bought her on her 3rd birthday, before everything fell apart. Her dark curls splayed across the pillow, so much like her mother's that sometimes it made his heart ache. "I'm doing my best, kiddo," he whispered into the darkness. "I promise." Morning came too quickly, as it always did. Daniel's alarm blared at 5:30 a.m., and he silenced it with a practiced swipe. The apartment was cold, he kept the heat low to save on utilities, and he shivered as he showered and dressed in his usual work attire, pressed slacks, a button-down shirt, and the one decent tie he owned. By 6:15, he was in Emma's room, gently rousing her for school. "Rise and shine, Em. Time for another adventure." Emma groaned and burrowed deeper under her covers. "5 more minutes, Daddy." "Not today, sweetheart. Mrs. Patel can't be late for her doctor's appointment, remember? We need to get you to her place by 7. At the mention of Mrs. Patel, Emma perked up. The elderly woman who watched Emma before and after school had become like a grandmother to her, filling some of the void left by Melissa's departure. Breakfast was simple: oatmeal with a sprinkle of brown sugar for Emma, black coffee for Daniel. As they ate, Emma chattered about her upcoming school play. "I'm going to be a tree, Daddy. Ms. Wilson says I have the best tree pose in the whole class." Daniel smiled, his exhaustion momentarily forgotten. "That's amazing, Em. I can't wait to see it. You promise you'll come? Not like the science fair?" The innocent question landed like a punch to his gut. He'd missed her science fair last month because his boss, Victoria Reeves, had scheduled a last-minute client meeting that ran late. The disappointment in Emma's eyes when he'd finally arrived to find an empty gymnasium had haunted him for weeks. "I promise, Em. Wild horses couldn't keep me away." After dropping Emma at Mrs. Patel's apartment, Daniel navigated the morning traffic to Pinnacle Marketing Solutions, where he'd worked as an account manager for the past 4 years. The company occupied 3 floors of a gleaming downtown high-rise, all glass and chrome and success. Daniel often felt out of place there, especially since Victoria had taken over as creative director 8 months ago. Victoria Reeves was everything Daniel was not: confident, polished, and seemingly effortless in her success. At 35, she was the youngest creative director in the company's history, with a reputation for brilliance that was matched only by her demanding nature. She was also undeniably beautiful, with sharp green eyes that seemed to see right through people and dark hair that she wore in a sleek bob. Daniel parked his aging Honda in the underground garage, wedged between luxury vehicles that cost more than his annual salary. He checked his watch, 7:45 a.m. 15 minutes early, as always. He took the elevator to the 23rd floor, nodding to the security guard as he badged in. The office was quiet at this hour, with only a few early birds at their desks. Daniel settled at his workstation, booting up his computer and reviewing his calendar for the day. His first meeting wasn't until 9:30, which gave him time to prepare the presentation for the Hartwell account, a potential client that could mean a substantial commission if he landed it. At 8:30, the elevator dinged, and Victoria stepped out. As always, heads turned. Today she wore a tailored charcoal suit with a silk blouse the color of ripe cherries. Her heels clicked purposefully across the marble floor as she made her way to her office, stopping briefly at Daniel's desk. "Morning, Matthews. How's the Hartwell presentation coming along?" Daniel straightened in his chair. "Good morning, Ms. Reeves. It's nearly finished. I've incorporated the changes you suggested about the digital marketing strategy." Victoria leaned against his desk, her perfume, something expensive and subtle, wafting over him. "Excellent. And please, I've told you a dozen times to call me Victoria." She smiled, and Daniel noticed, not for the first time, how it transformed her face, softening the sharp edges of her professional demeanor. "Right, sorry. Victoria." She lingered a moment longer than necessary. "You know, I was thinking we could discuss the presentation over dinner tonight. The client meeting is tomorrow, and I want to make sure we're aligned." Daniel felt a familiar tension creep up his spine. This wasn't the first time Victoria had suggested after-hours meetings that seemed to blur the line between professional and personal. He'd been careful to maintain boundaries, acutely aware of both his position as a single father and the complications of workplace relationships, especially with his boss. "I appreciate the offer, but I need to get home to Emma tonight. Mrs. Patel can only stay until 6, and—" "Bring her along," Victoria interrupted. "I'd love to meet your daughter. We could go somewhere kid-friendly." The suggestion caught Daniel off guard. In the 8 months Victoria had been his boss, she'd never shown interest in his personal life beyond the occasional question about how Emma was doing. "That's very kind of you, but it's a school night, and Emma has a routine. Maybe we could meet early tomorrow before the client arrives?" Something flickered across Victoria's face, disappointment, perhaps, or frustration, but it was quickly replaced by her professional smile. "Of course. 8 a.m. in my office, then." As she walked away, Daniel couldn't help but notice the slight stiffness in her shoulders. He sighed, turning back to his computer. He had the distinct feeling he'd just failed some sort of test, but he couldn't afford to dwell on it. The Hartwell account needed his full attention. The day passed in a blur of meetings, phone calls, and last-minute revisions to the presentation. By 5:30, Daniel was gathering his things to leave when his phone buzzed with a text from Mrs. Patel. "Emma has fever. 101.2, gave children's Tylenol at 5. She's asking for you." Daniel's heart raced as he quickly packed up his laptop. Emma rarely got sick, but when she did, it hit her hard. He was halfway to the elevator when Victoria emerged from the conference room. "Daniel, where are you going? We still need to finalize the budget projections for Hartwell." "I'm sorry, Victoria. Emma's sick. I need to get home." Victoria's expression softened immediately. "Of course. Is there anything I can do?" "No, but thank you. I'll work on the projections from home tonight after she's asleep." Victoria nodded. "Keep me updated on how she's doing." The genuine concern in her voice surprised him, and he managed a grateful smile before hurrying to the elevator. When Daniel arrived at Mrs. Patel's apartment, he found Emma curled up on the couch, her face flushed and her eyes glassy with fever. Mrs. Patel, a tiny woman with silver hair and kind eyes, met him at the door with a worried expression. She was fine at school, but when I picked her up, the teacher said she had been quiet all afternoon. The fever started about an hour ago. Daniel knelt beside the couch, brushing Emma's damp curls from her forehead. Hey, Emma Bear. Not feeling so good, huh? Emma's lower lip trembled. My throat hurts, Daddy. And I'm cold. Let's get you home and into bed, okay? We'll have some soup, and you can watch cartoons on my tablet. After thanking Mrs. Patel and promising to call with updates, Daniel carried Emma to the car. By the time they reached their apartment, her fever had climbed to 102, and she was shivering despite the blanket he'd wrapped around her. The next few hours were a blur of lukewarm baths to bring down the fever, spoonfuls of soup that Emma barely touched, and calls to the pediatrician's after-hours line. By 10 o'clock, the fever had broken, and Emma had finally fallen into a fitful sleep beside him on the couch. Daniel gently extricated himself and retrieved his laptop. The Hartwell presentation was tomorrow, and regardless of Emma's illness, he couldn't afford to be unprepared. He worked until well past midnight, his eyes burning with exhaustion, before finally sending the completed budget projections to Victoria with a brief email explaining the situation with Emma. To his surprise, his phone rang almost immediately after he hit send. Victoria's name flashed on the screen. Hello, he answered quietly, moving to the kitchen so as not to wake Emma. How is she? Victoria's voice was soft, concerned. Better. The fever broke a couple of hours ago. The doctor thinks it's just a virus that needs to run its course. That's good to hear. There was a pause. Daniel, don't worry about coming in tomorrow. I can handle the Hartwell meeting. Relief washed over him, followed quickly by anxiety. The Hartwell account was potentially worth millions to the company, and a substantial commission for him. Are you sure? I could try to find someone to stay with Emma. Absolutely not, Victoria interrupted firmly. Your daughter needs you. The client will understand. Thank you, Daniel said, the words inadequate for the gratitude he felt. I've sent you the budget projections, and all the presentation materials are in the shared folder. I know. I've reviewed everything. Your work is impeccable, as always. There was something in her tone, a warmth that went beyond professional appreciation. I appreciate that. Another pause, longer this time. Daniel. I hope you know that I value you. Not just as an employee, but as a person. You work harder than anyone I know, and you're an amazing father. That's rare. The unexpected praise left him momentarily speechless. Thank you, Victoria. That means a lot. Get some rest. And give Emma my best wishes for a speedy recovery. After they hung up, Daniel sat at the kitchen table, turning the conversation over in his mind. In the 8 months they'd worked together, this was perhaps the most personal interaction they'd had. It left him with a strange, unsettled feeling, not unpleasant, but complicated. The next morning, Emma's fever returned with a vengeance. Daniel called the pediatrician again and secured an appointment for later that afternoon. He sent Victoria a text updating her on the situation, to which she responded with concern and assurances that everything was under control at the office. The doctor diagnosed Emma with strep throat and prescribed antibiotics. By the time they returned home, it was nearly 5 o'clock, and Daniel was exhausted. Emma, however, was already feeling better after the first dose of medication and was currently engrossed in a cartoon on the living room TV. Daniel was in the kitchen preparing a simple dinner of soup and crackers when there was a knock at the door. Wiping his hands on a dish towel, he went to answer it, expecting perhaps Mrs. Patel checking in on Emma. Instead, he found Victoria standing in the hallway, holding a large paper bag and looking uncharacteristically uncertain. Victoria, he said, unable to hide his surprise. What are you doing here? She held up the bag. Chicken soup from Marcello's, popsicles for sore throats, and a new stuffed animal because sick kids deserve presents. At least, That's what my mom always said. Daniel was momentarily speechless. That's incredibly thoughtful. Please, come in. He stepped aside, suddenly acutely aware of his modest apartment with its mismatched furniture and walls that desperately needed a fresh coat of paint. Victoria, however, didn't seem to notice as she entered, her eyes immediately finding Emma on the couch. You must be Emma, she said, her voice gentler than Daniel had ever heard it. I'm Victoria. I work with your dad. Emma regarded her with curious eyes. Are you Daddy's boss? The one who makes him stay late sometimes? Daniel winced, but Victoria laughed, a genuine, warm sound. Yes, that's me. And I'm very sorry about that. Your dad is the best employee I have, so sometimes I need his help more than I should. She approached the couch and held out the bag. I brought you some things that might make you feel better. Emma's eyes widened as she peered into the bag. Popsicles. And, she pulled out a soft, plush fox with enormous eyes and a fluffy tail. Oh. He's so cute. I thought you might like him. He can keep you company while you get better. Emma hugged the fox to her chest. Thank you. I'm going to name him Rusty. Victoria smiled, and Daniel was struck by how different she looked outside the office, softer somehow, more approachable in her jeans and simple blouse, her hair slightly tousled from the wind. Perfect name, she said, then turned to Daniel. The soup is still hot. I thought you both might be hungry. We are. I was just about to heat up some canned soup, but this is much better. Would you like to join us? The invitation slipped out before he could consider it, but Victoria's face lit up. I'd love to, if I'm not intruding. Not at all. As Daniel set the table, using the good dishes he rarely took out, he found himself in the surreal position of having his boss in his home, chatting animatedly with his daughter about school plays and favorite animals. Victoria seemed genuinely interested in everything Emma had to say, laughing at her jokes and sympathizing with her sore throat. During dinner, Victoria regaled them with the story of the Hartwell meeting. So there I was, about to start the presentation, when Mr. Hartwell's phone rings. He answers it, right in the middle of the conference room, and it's his wife. Apparently, he forgot their anniversary. Emma giggled, the sound making Daniel's heart lighter than it had been in days. What did he do? Daniel asked, genuinely curious. Victoria's eyes twinkled. He apologized profusely, both to his wife and to me, and then asked if we could reschedule for next week. But here's the best part, he was so impressed with the materials you prepared, Daniel, that he's already committed to signing with us. He said, and I quote, anyone who puts this much thought into a presentation before we've even signed a contract is someone I want to work with. Daniel nearly choked on his soup. He's signing? Just like that? Victoria nodded, her expression proud. Just like that. Your commission check is going to be very nice next month. The relief that washed over him was so intense it was almost physical. The Hartwell commission would cover Emma's overdue medical bills and maybe even allow him to start a small college fund for her. After dinner, Emma insisted on showing Victoria her room, proudly displaying her collection of rocks and the solar system mobile hanging from her ceiling. Victoria listened with genuine interest as Emma explained which planet was which, occasionally catching Daniel's eye with a smile that made his chest tighten in an unfamiliar way. When Emma's eyelids began to droop, Daniel suggested it was time for bed. To his surprise, Victoria offered to read Emma a bedtime story while he cleaned up the kitchen. Through the open door, he could hear her animated voice bringing "Where the Wild Things Are" to life, complete with different voices for each character. By the time Victoria emerged from Emma's room, Daniel had finished cleaning up and was sitting on the couch, still trying to process the evening's unexpected turn of events. She's asleep, Victoria sighed. Victoria sat beside him on the couch, close enough that he could smell her perfume but not so close as to seem presumptuous. She's a remarkable child, Daniel. You've done an amazing job with her. Thank you, he said, the compliment warming him more than it should have. It hasn't been easy, but she makes it worth it. Victoria was quiet for a moment, her fingers tracing patterns on the worn fabric of the couch. Can I ask what happened with her mother? You don't have to tell me if it's too personal. Daniel hesitated. He rarely discussed Melissa with anyone, the wound still tender even after 3 years. But something about Victoria's genuine interest made him want to share. Melissa and I met in college. We were young, maybe too young, but we thought we had it all figured out. When Emma came along, I was ecstatic, but Melissa, she struggled. Postpartum depression hit her hard, and then it just never really went away. He paused, the memories washing over him. She tried, therapy, medication, but nothing seemed to help. By the time Emma was 3, Melissa said she couldn't do it anymore. She felt trapped, like she was drowning. One day, I came home from work, and she was gone. Just a note saying she needed to find herself and that Emma would be better off without her. Victoria's hand found his, her touch gentle. I'm so sorry, Daniel. That must have been devastating. It was. For both of us. Emma didn't understand why her mommy left, and I didn't have good answers. The first year was the hardest, trying to work, be both parents, keep it all together. He shook his head. We hear from Melissa occasionally, a birthday card, a Christmas gift, but she's never asked to see Emma. That's her loss, Victoria said, her voice firm. Any mother would be lucky to have a daughter like Emma. Daniel looked at her, really looked at her, for perhaps the first time. Not as his boss, not as the intimidating Victoria Reeves, but as a woman who had shown unexpected kindness to his daughter and genuine interest in his life. Why did you come here tonight, Victoria? She met his gaze, something vulnerable flickering in her eyes. Because I wanted to help. Because I've watched you work yourself to exhaustion for months, never complaining, always putting everyone else first. Because when you told me Emma was sick, all I could think about was what I could do to make things easier for you both. She paused, seeming to gather her courage. And because I've been trying to get your attention for months, Daniel, but you're either completely oblivious or deliberately ignoring my hints. Daniel blinked, stunned. Your hints? Victoria laughed, the sound both amused and exasperated. The dinner invitations? The coffee breaks at your desk? The way I find excuses to work late when you're working late? I even wore that blue dress to the company party because I overheard you telling Mark it was your favorite color. I thought you were just being a good boss, Daniel said weakly, though even as the words left his mouth, he recognized their absurdity. Looking back, the signs had been there, he'd just been too consumed with work and single parenthood to acknowledge them. A good boss doesn't bring soup and stuffed animals to her employee's sick child, Victoria pointed out. A good boss doesn't spend hours thinking about her employee's smile or wondering what it would be like to be part of his life. The confession hung between them, changing the air in the room. Daniel felt as though he was standing on the edge of something significant, something that could either complicate his life immeasurably or enrich it beyond measure. Victoria, You don't have to say anything, she interrupted, suddenly looking uncertain. I know this is inappropriate. I'm your boss, and you have Emma to think about, and 1,000 other reasons why this is a bad idea. I should go. She started to rise, but Daniel caught her hand. Wait. Please. She settled back onto the couch, her eyes questioning. I'm not good at this, he admitted. Since Melissa left, I've been so focused on Emma and work that I haven't allowed myself to think about anything else. Anyone else. But that doesn't mean I haven't noticed you. Victoria's expression softened. You have? How could I not? You're brilliant and driven and beautiful. But you're also my boss, and I can't afford to lose this job. Emma depends on me. I would never let that happen, Victoria said firmly. Your position at Pinnacle is secure because you're exceptional at what you do, not because of any personal relationship between us. Daniel nodded, acknowledging the truth in her words. And then there's Emma. She's been through so much already. I can't bring someone into her life who might disappear. I understand that, Victoria said quietly. And I would never want to hurt Emma. But Daniel, I'm not Melissa. I don't make promises I can't keep, and I don't run when things get difficult. The conviction in her voice resonated with something deep inside him, a longing he'd suppressed for so long that he'd almost forgotten it existed. The longing for partnership, for someone to share the burdens and joys of life with. Maybe, he said slowly, we could take things one step at a time. See where it leads. Victoria's smile was like sunrise breaking over the horizon, gradual, then brilliant. I'd like that. As if to seal the tentative agreement, she leaned forward and pressed a soft, brief kiss to his lips. It was gentle, almost chaste, but it sent a current of electricity through Daniel that left him momentarily breathless. When she pulled back, her eyes were bright with a mixture of hope and uncertainty that mirrored his own feelings. I should go. It's late, and you need rest. Daniel walked her to the door, a strange lightness in his chest that he hadn't felt in years. At the threshold, Victoria turned to him once more. Thank you for letting me in tonight, she said, and they both knew she meant more than just into his apartment. Thank you for the soup, he replied with a smile. And for making Emma smile. That's everything to me. After she left, Daniel checked on Emma, who was sleeping peacefully, Rusty the fox clutched tightly in her arms. He stood watching her for a long moment, his mind replaying the evening's unexpected events. He had no idea where this new path with Victoria might lead, but for the first time in 3 years, he felt ready to find out. The next morning, Emma's fever was gone, and she was bouncing with energy, chattering excitedly about Victoria and Rusty and whether they could invite Victoria over again soon. Daniel listened with a mixture of amusement and caution, not wanting to encourage expectations that might lead to disappointment. We'll see, Em. Victoria is very busy with work. But she likes us, Emma said with the simple certainty of childhood. I can tell. Daniel couldn't argue with that. How about some breakfast? You must be hungry after barely eating yesterday. As they ate pancakes, a special treat to celebrate Emma feeling better, Daniel's phone buzzed with a text from Victoria. How's our patient this morning? The hour didn't escape his notice, and it sent a warm flutter through his chest. Much better. Currently demolishing pancakes and planning Rusty's first adventure. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, then appeared again. I'm glad. About the meeting today, take your time coming in. Emma's health comes first. Daniel hesitated, then typed, actually, Mrs. Patel says she can watch Emma this afternoon if you need me there. The response was immediate, I always need you, Daniel. But only if Emma is truly better. The simple admission made his heart race. He was still staring at his phone when Emma asked, is that Victoria? Tell her I said thank you for Rusty. After dropping Emma at Mrs. Patel's with strict instructions to call if her fever returned, Daniel headed to the office. He felt strangely nervous, as though he was seeing Pinnacle Marketing Solutions for the first time. In a way, everything looked different in the light of last night's revelations. When he stepped off the elevator, the office was buzzing with activity. The Hartwell account was big news, and several colleagues stopped to congratulate him on the win. Daniel accepted their praise with modest thanks, his eyes scanning the floor for Victoria. He found her in the conference room, deep in conversation with the CEO, Richard Pinnacle himself. Through the glass walls, Daniel could see her gesturing animatedly, her face alight with the passion that made her such a formidable creative director. Richard was nodding, clearly impressed. Not wanting to interrupt, Daniel headed to his desk to catch up on emails. He'd barely logged in when his phone buzzed with another text from Victoria. My office. 10 minutes. The brevity made him uneasy. Had she reconsidered? Was last night a mistake in the harsh light of day? He spent the next 10 minutes alternating between reviewing client emails and glancing anxiously at the clock. At precisely 10 minutes later, he knocked on Victoria's office door. "Come in," she called, her voice giving nothing away. Daniel entered to find her standing by the window, looking out at the city skyline. She turned when he closed the door, and he was relieved to see a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "How's Emma, really?" she asked. "Really better. The antibiotics are working, and she hasn't stopped talking about Rusty and his new friend Victoria." Victoria's smile widened. "I'm glad. She's a special little girl." "She is," Daniel agreed, still standing awkwardly by the door. "Victoria, about last night." "I meant what I said," she interrupted, moving closer. "All of it. But I understand if you've had second thoughts in the light of day. This is complicated, and Emma has to be your priority." "She is," Daniel said firmly. "She always will be. But that doesn't mean there isn't room for more." The tension in Victoria's shoulders eased visibly. "Good. Because I just spent the last hour convincing Richard to restructure the creative department." Daniel frowned, confused by the apparent change of subject. "Restructure how?" "As of next week, you'll be reporting directly to Richard, not to me. I'll still be creative director, but you'll be heading up a new division focused specifically on digital marketing innovation, with a substantial raise, I might add." Daniel stared at her, processing the implications. "You're removing the boss-employee dynamic." Victoria nodded. "It was the right thing to do, regardless of whatever this is between us. Your work on Hartwell proved you're ready for more responsibility." Richard agreed immediately. The gesture touched him deeply, not just the promotion, which would ease his financial worries considerably, but the thoughtfulness behind it. Victoria had found a way to give them a chance without compromising either of their professional integrity. "Thank you," he said simply. "That means more than you know." "There's one more thing," Victoria said, suddenly looking nervous. "Emma mentioned a school play when we were talking last night. Something about being a tree?" Daniel nodded, surprised she remembered such a small detail. "Next Friday evening. She's very excited about it. I was wondering, if it wouldn't be too much, too soon, if I might come." "With you, of course." The request, made with such careful consideration for his and Emma's feelings, cemented something in Daniel's heart. This wasn't just attraction or convenience, Victoria genuinely cared. "She would love that," he said softly. "And so would I." Victoria's smile was radiant. "It's a date, then." The word date hung between them, full of promise and possibility. Daniel found himself smiling back, the weight he'd carried for so long feeling suddenly lighter. "Now," Victoria said, her tone shifting to something more professional though her eyes remained warm, "we should probably get to the marketing meeting before people start to talk." Daniel laughed. "I think that ship might have sailed. Mark from accounting winked at me when I came in this morning." Victoria rolled her eyes. "Office gossip moves at the speed of light. We'll just have to give them something worth talking about." As they walked to the meeting together, not quite touching but closer than mere colleagues would stand, Daniel felt a sense of rightness that had been missing from his life for too long. The path ahead wasn't clear, there would be challenges, adjustments, moments of doubt, but for the first time in years, he was eager to see where it led. The following weeks unfolded in a series of small, significant moments. Victoria attended Emma's school play, cheering loudly when Emma performed her tree pose with perfect stillness. She joined them for pizza afterward, listening intently as Emma recounted every detail of the performance. Their first official date was a simple dinner after Emma was asleep, with Mrs. Patel staying late to babysit. They talked for hours, discovering shared interests in obscure documentaries and spicy food, and differences that sparked lively debates about everything from politics to the best way to load a dishwasher. At work, Daniel thrived in his new role, his confidence growing as Richard gave him increasing responsibility. Victoria remained brilliant and demanding as ever, but there was a new lightness to her that colleagues noticed and appreciated. They were careful to keep their relationship professional at the office, but outside of work, they gradually built something that felt increasingly like family. Victoria taught Emma to make her grandmother's famous chocolate chip cookies. Daniel helped Victoria assemble the bookshelf she'd been putting off for months. They developed inside jokes and favorite restaurants and the comfortable rhythms that form the backbone of shared lives. It wasn't always smooth. There were moments when Daniel panicked, fearing he was setting Emma up for another abandonment. There were times when Victoria questioned whether she was ready for the responsibility of being in a child's life. There were arguments about schedules and priorities and the thousand small compromises that relationships require. But through it all, they talked. They listened. They tried again. 6 months after the night Victoria brought soup and a stuffed fox to a sick little girl, she and Daniel sat on his couch, their couch now, really, given how much time she spent there, after Emma had gone to bed. "I've been thinking," Victoria said, her head resting on his shoulder. "Dangerous," Daniel teased, earning a playful swat. "I'm serious. My lease is up next month, and I'm not sure I want to renew it." Daniel's heart skipped a beat. "Oh. This place is closer to the office," she continued casually, though he could feel the tension in her body. "And Emma's school. And it seems silly to pay rent on an apartment I barely use anymore." Daniel turned to face her, taking her hands in his. "Victoria Reeves, are you asking to move in with us?" She bit her lip, suddenly vulnerable. "Is it too soon? I know it's only been 6 months, but it feels right, and Emma said just yesterday that she wishes I could have pancakes with you both every morning instead of just weekends, and..." Daniel silenced her with a kiss. "It's not too soon," he murmured against her lips. "It's exactly right." Victoria's smile was brilliant. "Really? Really? But there's one condition." She raised an eyebrow. "What's that?" "You have to let Emma redecorate the spare room as her art studio like she's been begging to do. If you're moving in, we're going to need the storage space in there." Victoria laughed, the sound full of joy and relief. "Deal. Though I should warn you, my book collection is substantial." "We'll make room," Daniel promised, pulling her close. "We'll always make room for you." 2 weeks later, on a sunny Saturday morning, Daniel and Emma helped Victoria move her belongings into their apartment. As Emma carefully arranged Victoria's books on the newly installed shelves, Daniel found Victoria standing in the kitchen, a strange expression on her face. "Everything okay?" he asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind. She leaned back against him, her hands covering his. "More than okay. I was just thinking about that night I came over with soup. If you had turned me away." "I wouldn't have," Daniel said with certainty. "Even then, I couldn't have." Victoria turned in his arms, her eyes suspiciously bright. "I love you, Daniel Matthews. You and Emma both. I never thought I'd find this, a family, a home that isn't just a place but people." Daniel's throat tightened with emotion. "We love you too. More than I know how to say." From the living room came Emma's voice, excited and impatient. "Daddy. Victoria. Come see how I organize the books by color. It looks like a rainbow." They shared a smile, the kind that held promises for all the days to come. "We're coming, Daniel called back, taking Victoria's hand. Together, they went to admire the rainbow of books and the little girl who had, in her own way, brought them together. And as Daniel watched Victoria lift Emma up to place the final book on the highest shelf, he knew with absolute certainty that sometimes, the most unexpected turns in life lead exactly where you're meant to be. Asterisk if you enjoyed this story of unexpected love and second chances, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more heartwarming content that reminds us all that sometimes, the best things in life come when we least expect them.